How's it going?
Doing well. I know you're not. Thanks for being out here. Dustin has got a cold, flu, something, I don't know, that I'm sure we'll all have after shaking a million hands this week. But so thanks for coming out while you're sick.
Yep.
Before we get started, can I just see how many people in the audience use Asana at work? Okay, a good portion of the room. That's not. But maybe you can start by telling folks what Asana is and what it seeks to do for its customers.
Absolutely. So Asana's mission is to help humanity thrive by enabling all teams in the world to collaborate effortlessly. So the specific way we do that is we provide an online service that helps teams track their work and really get clarity about exactly what they need to be on the same page about to get results. So we help you answer 3 critical questions for your team. So what are the next steps between now and accomplishing our next goal? Who's responsible for those steps, and when are they going to be done?
And I think last week, is that right? You did an expansion. Can you tell folks what the news was there and what you announced?
Yeah. We're really excited. So part of the reason we're here in Portugal today is we're really starting to engage more with European customers. So last week we actually launched Asana in new languages for the first time. So last Tuesday, I believe, we launched French and German. And in the next couple months, we're going to be adding Spanish and Portuguese as well. We've actually really been drawn by customers in the rest of the world into that market. So today, 40% of our subscription revenue is already coming from outside North America. And in Europe, signups are going 4 times faster as they are in the rest of the world. So it's really starting to heat up, and we're just leaning into that energy.
That kind of leads me to the next thing I wanted to know about. You're used to working at fast-growing companies. Maybe you can give us a sense of what the scale of growth has been recently for you guys. Like how rapidly are you expanding now, and how do you manage that expansion?
Yeah, so we have well over 25,000 customers now, growing super quickly. The business has actually accelerated this year since 2016, so we're really excited about that. And managing the expansion, so a lot of it is just obviously we're scaling the company, but we also just need to invest more and more in making a product that's easy to use, easy to get started, so that customers can adopt on their own. And then when we're helping them, we're just helping them level up their usage, understand new use cases, and really leverage the tool for more productivity.
Can you talk about who some of those 25,000 customers are? Like, what are the types of businesses that use Asana? Like, who can Asana help?
Yeah, so originally, 4 or 5 years ago, we were really we had a pretty diverse set of customers, but it was a little more concentrated in sort of the early adopter market. So a lot of the big tech companies like Uber, Lyft, Stripe, those sort of big names were the main adopters. Today, things are much more diverse, and we have great representation in almost every industry. So media and entertainment, so companies like HBO, the Tribeca Film Festival, Major League Baseball, commerce, so we have companies like Nike and Overstock.com, and even nonprofits and government entities. So one that I'm really excited about in nonprofit is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, also the Malala Foundation. And then on the government side, one thing that's really cool is the city of Providence, Rhode Island in the United States, their whole team actually uses Asana to run the city all the way up to the mayor.
Do you find that you have to do specialized things when you add these new types of businesses? Like if you start supporting a government, do you have to do fundamentally different things for them than you were doing for a tech startup or a nonprofit? Like do you have to add new features, or is it open the box and it works? I know there's no box, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's an online service. So generally we try and build the functionality that will be useful to the most set of people and give people the sort of customization and flexibility to map Asana to their use cases. But we also provide some ready-made templates that are specialized for places where we know there's a lot of usage. So for example, marketing teams really love Asana, so we have templates for starting an editorial calendar, throwing an event like this one, and that helps people sort of get a jump start on their use case. Additionally, we have customer success representatives, and they tend to get to know an industry pretty well, and then when they're working in a customer, working with a particular customer, they can kind of speak their language more and help them understand how Asana fits them even better.
I'm wondering, do you find that there are things who just have their own unique needs? Like will a government have its own unique need, a government or city government, or and then you have to build things to meet those needs? Is that something that happens, or is it more about like understanding what they do and then teaching them how to use your service?
So occasionally it happens, often sort of on the sort of non-user facing side, so compliance, the way we do the sales process, security review. The user facing functionality is really meant to be quite universal. I think a good analogy is something like Google Docs and spreadsheets, where yes, you can use it for these very specialized use cases, but like fundamentally it's a data model and a structure and a way of thinking about your work. And so you can pretty much adopt Asana for almost anything. We see all sorts of use cases from venture capital to biotech. There's literally a company that's like tracking DNA sequences in Asana. So almost anything you think of, you can map onto the service, and then our job is to just figure out how to sort of pave those dirt paths and make them better and better over time.
So this is the second company you founded, unless there's a third, I'm unaware of.
Yep.
But,
yeah.
It's the second company you founded. First one did okay, I guess. Facebook's
did okay, yeah.
Facebook's got a few users. What did you learn in that Facebook experience that you brought with you to Asana? And I guess like what would be interesting to know is like what you learned that you think would be applicable to other people. Were there things that you, in hindsight, thought, oh, we should have been doing that differently, and that you then did differently at Asana?
Yeah, there's a couple different things. One that I think is just very meta and applies to all companies is just the importance of intentionality when you're both defining your purpose as a company, when you're recruiting people, when you're thinking about what your culture is going to be. I think most fast-growing startups tend to focus first on the product, focus on the business. If they're still around after a few years, they get to a point where they say, hey, we should really think about what kind of culture we want. But it almost ends up being more like anthropology at that point, where you're just sort of observing what your culture is and documenting it. And, Ben Horowitz likes to say, after the first year, the sort of book of culture is written and sealed. I don't think that's quite literally true, but there's a lot of truth to it. So I think just the importance of being forward-looking about what kind of company you want to build and actually taking the steps that are necessary to manifest those outcomes. So I think that's the sort of top one. And then another one that you're probably getting at is just the importance of working at a sustainable pace. So I don't like to use the term work-life balance, because I think at this point it has a bunch of connotations with lifestyle companies and companies that are really sort of emphasizing the don't work too hard part. I really think about it as optimizing your velocity over time. So all good companies are really more like marathons than sprints. So you have to work at a pace and work in a way that you can sustain over many years. And I think that's a lesson I learned the hard way at Facebook. But I think that organization, as it matured, as people got older, they learned those lessons. And then when we were starting Asana, we were able to sort of start from day one with this is the kind of culture, this is kind of the environment that we think will really optimize the employees that we have.
What types of things do you do to create that sort of that sustainable culture there? Like, are there specific things that people can adopt in their companies that help them do that?
For the work-life balance part?
Yeah. So to keep people from burning out, to keep people from work. I mean, we talked ahead of time. I think one of the things that Silicon Valley is notorious for is having people work 80-hour weeks.
Right.
And just work until you can't anymore, and have your job be your entire focus.
Right.
Which I assume you did when you were young, but I wonder how you encourage people to live sustainably without building a lifestyle company where they're just phoning it in.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different things. So I like to think about work-life balance as sort of fractal in nature. It's important to think about at every level. So in an individual work session all the way up to the time span of years. So I think it's really important to build an environment where people, for example, can take breaks at work and don't just sort of, work 12, 15-hour days straight, where they really take their meal breaks, and also set a great example as leaders where you're not sending them emails at sort of 1 in the morning, because even if you're okay with them responding the next day, they signal very strongly off of that and feel like they have to just sort of get on it right away. So I actually have a habit using Asana where if I am working sort of off hours, I'll just sort of write a message, store it in Asana, and then when I get into work the next day, I'll actually send that out so I'm not sort of setting a bad example for people. And then similarly, taking your weekends, making sure people take vacations, and then the biggest example that's become a best practice in Silicon Valley is having a sabbatical program. So if you've been at a company for a few years, having the opportunity to take a longer period of time off for 6, sometimes 8 weeks. And I think that's really key for giving people, the time to really recharge. Because what I've seen when companies don't have that is they get to a point where they're just kind of burnt out and they just kind of have to quit because it's the only way to get a real break. And then you lose that employee, which is bad for the business, and it's bad for the person as well.
Do you do that yourself? Do you take sabbaticals?
It's a little harder as a CEO. The one sabbatical I took is about 2 years ago. I took a 3-week break, and I had to do a lot of advanced planning, set things up so that I could really unplug and not have to stay on top of communication. Even that was super valuable.
Are any of these things that you're talking about reflected in the product itself? Like, does Asana have things that are intended for people to help build a more intentional business or to help build a business that that encourages people to work sustainably?
Yeah, so a lot of what Asana is trying to do is really help people focus. Because it's easy when you don't have a tool like Asana, you're just kind of getting all of these notifications from your different services, all these sources of data, and it can feel really chaotic. But with Asana, the whole product is oriented in a way where it sort of focuses you on your to-do list, and you can even open up a particular task into what we call focus mode, and it takes over your entire screen, and it really helps you focus on what you're intending to do right now. Additionally, part of the genesis of the whole company was something that David Allen talked about in the book Getting Things Done, where most people have what's called continual partial attention disorder. If you don't keep a task list while you're doing everything else, you're kind of recycling your task list in your head so that you don't forget it. But if you can, even if you're using a sheet of paper, but ideally if you're putting those tasks into Asana, it allows you to sort of set that aside and take your cognitive space back to focus on what's in front of you.
Something I think is interesting that's changed with a lot of enterprise software over my lifetime at least is that it used to just basically be tooling, like it was a lot of like it's a tool here. Here's a thing that helps you make a spreadsheet, or helps you keep a spreadsheet. And I feel like today a lot of enterprise software has almost like an underlying philosophy, like an underlying almost like ideology about this is the way that you should be doing things. Do you think is that a natural evolution of enterprise software? Do you think that that's true, or like should it have a philosophy? Should the things that help you work also teach you how to work?
So I think the way I think about that is just that defaults are really important, but you should give people the flexibility to work the way they want to. So if you have a job where it's really important to just be really responsive and you need to sort of work off your notifications and see what's coming in, you can kind of live out of the Asana inbox. That's fine. But the product's trying to steer most of our customers towards living out of their task list. So I think my experience in talking to a lot of people is they kind of want those defaults, those strong nudges, because they're just otherwise you just worry, am I doing it optimally? Am I doing things the right way? And the more that products can kind of help sort of reassure you, yes, you're following best practices right now, it actually makes people relax and again, just be able to focus more on their work.
I think that's kind of a yes. Is that?
It's kind of a yes, but I don't want to go so far as like you shouldn't be allowed to work the way you want if it's not the way the software wants you to.
Yeah. One of I believe, correct me if I'm misrepresenting, but one of your strategies, I believe, is having a sort of a bottom-up culture of sales where you're trying to get people interested in using the product and see how it improves their life and their work, and they're actually the users who introduce it to the workplace. Is that correct? And am I mischaracterizing that? How does that?
The users introduce it to the workplace?
Yeah. How does that work? And like, how did you? Like, that doesn't seem like a natural selling strategy for me. I think traditionally people have always been, had like a sales force that goes out into a workplace and meets with the CTO, CIO, whoever, and and gets them to sign up for 40 desks or 400 desks or whatever.
Right.
Why is that your strategy, and how did you go about that, and like what types of things have you had to do in the software as a result of that strategy?
So, Let's see, there's a bunch of questions.
Sorry.
No, no.
Let's start with
okay.
just
No,
why did you go that route? Like why did you decide to focus on the users rather than the top level?
Yeah, so I think we're really standing on the shoulders of giants in a lot of ways. So yes, it is a new selling strategy, but it's not that new. In particular, I think the G Suite really paved the way for this kind of adoption. Dropbox, things like that, where they really focused on building a user experience that was so good that people inside these enterprises would want to use it. When you step back, it's kind of funny that the market is divided into consumer software and enterprise software in the first place, because ultimately enterprise employees are really just consumers at work, right? They're the same people, and so they deserve to have the same quality of experience in the product. And I think that this has been kind of an evolution of the market where 10 or 15 years ago, companies were much more restrictive about what software you could use, and you kind of had to go through IT, and that was the only way to adopt software. Now, partly because other people have broken down these walls for us, it's very common for individual teams to adopt a certain piece of software, and then IT sort of supports and enables that usage so that other teams can adopt it as well. And the real reason we did it was to align our business interests with the end users, because when you don't have that alignment and you're selling just to sort of executives and IT, you end up sort of building this sort of like checklist of features and things that only those constituents care about, and it's at the expense of the product quality for the end users. So when you have that alignment, you really get to invest in building a great experience, and that makes your business grow faster as well.
How do you understand what makes that great experience? Like I would think that the natural inclination would just be like, let's throw more features to this thing until we've got everything, and you don't need anything else. But how do you determine like what makes a great experience? Because it seems like a lot of this is about feel and about also the knowledge of what someone who may be in Providence, Rhode Island, for example, needs and wants, and what their particular situation, the setup is like.
Yeah. So. We really want to focus on both. I don't want to sort of characterize Asana as not having a lot of functionality, so we need to both satisfy the sort of executive and team lead needs and build that functionality and build a great experience. But because we have this bottoms-up model, we're able to take a lot of the approaches that you see in consumer, doing field user testing, doing A/B testing in the software itself, and really using that to help point the way. And then also we've just really invested in building a team that has those skills. So we have designers and engineers that come from places like Google and Facebook and Airbnb and the places that have pioneered great design, and then they're bringing that sort of mindset to our software as well.
I want to ask you a little bit about something that happened last year.
Okay.
There was an election in the U.S. I don't know. Did anybody know that? There was an election in the U.S. and there were a lot of companies who were very shy. Nobody knew. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. There was a guy named Donald Trump was elected. But I feel like a lot of companies, especially in Silicon Valley, were often shy about vocally supporting one candidate or the other, for understandable reasons. There are all kinds of people who won't use your product if they don't think you're politically aligned with them. And that seems like it was especially true of enterprise companies. You were one of the few people I know of who very publicly came out as a Clinton supporter. You wrote a very widely read blog post articulating your reasons why. Were there any ramifications for that, or were you concerned that there would be any, and then were there? Did you lose customers over choosing to do that?
To my knowledge, this hasn't been an issue with any of our customers. Now, it goes without saying, they may not tell us, they may just not come to us, but I can't think of a single time where it was even brought up in a sales conversation. And I think it may be that people are sort of evolving in how they compartmentalize the different roles people have in the world, right? So I'm the CEO of Asana, I'm also an American, I'm also a human. These are all parts of my personality. And I think if we sort of ignore that and pretend it's not true, we're not really being authentic and in integrity. So that's sort of my optimistic take, is that people understand like this isn't going to affect the quality of service I give to them. We're not going to do things that damage customers that are have alternative political viewpoints. We also have employees that have alternative political viewpoints. I was much more concerned about alienating them internally, and did a lot messaging to make sure that people understood this wasn't about all conservatives, all Republicans are bad or anything like that. I had a very specific reason for wanting to get involved. And I also think this election was just very unprecedented in a lot of ways. So I'm not the only CEO that's spoken out in this cycle, and even a bunch of newspapers that are otherwise considered apolitical and nonpartisan, ended up writing op-eds that didn't necessarily support Secretary Clinton, but were actively against the current president.
Actually, I kind of want to go back to it. Did you give people internally a heads up that that was coming? Like, did folks know in Asana, and did anyone try to discourage you from doing that, or?
No one tried to discourage me. I did talk with the leadership team about it. I felt it was something that could potentially impact the business, could potentially impact employees, and I wanted to make sure that everyone was on board and understood. I didn't pre-announce it to the whole company because to 300 employees, but basically I published the Medium posts and I had a prepared staff message that went out 1 minute later.
Your first company is about bringing sort of individuals together, people who are in a social setting. Your second company is sort of about bringing workforces together, teams together, help them work. Was that an intentional thing? Like, were you trying to? Is that something that's important to you, and that you went out and did intentionally? Like, I've helped people sort of get together on a personal level. Now I want to help them do it on a more corporate level, or was that just coincidence?
Well, it's somewhat of a coincidence, but the genesis of Asana is actually that I was a leader was the leader of the engineering organization at Facebook, and I was trying to solve the problem I was facing there of coordinating the teams of people I had, because it was really hard to track down information. It was hard to know the status of projects. It was hard to keep everyone on the same page. So we ended up creating an internal work tracker there that became the way Facebook tracked its work. It's actually still used today. So they're very related in that sense. And I think they're related in that they are both impact-oriented, mission-driven, and involve communities.
I guess I was just wondering if it's like a personal issue with you, with trying to bring people together. I mean, the thing that you were saying even about why you wrote that post and being a member of different communities as a CEO, as an American, is that something that is philosophically important to you as a human, I guess?
Well, there's a higher level thing, which is really helping humanity be more prosperous, helping everyone be more empowered. So Asana's mission is prefixed to help humanity thrive. That language choice is really intentional. It's also actually the mission for my personal philanthropic foundation, Good Ventures. And that's really how I think about the higher level thing. I do think Facebook fits exactly into that mission as well.
Very good. Dustin, I know you're feeling terrible, so thanks for coming out here today. Really appreciate it. We're out of time. Thanks, everybody, for coming out.
Thanks, everyone.